I don't want to be stuck in like that 9 to 5 scenario. I want to move past that and be able to do something that like I truly want to do. So, like, what types of conversations do you guys usually have?
Man, so usually I just love hearing people's stories. Oh, sorry.
It's all
Appreciate that.
good.
Yeah, we
The
can,
wind is blowing it.
yeah. I gotta get some new magnets. Usually I just love hearing people's stories, man. And you know, like I said, I work in finance,
Yeah.
so at a certain point, you kind of like want to stimulate like other interests, or you want to like explore different things that you've always been curious about.
Yeah.
And one thing for me, like I've always just known that I've always just like loved hearing people's stories, and so I figured rather than like watch Netflix all weekend or what have you, or go out drinking, just spend that time with what I feel is like productive and impactful. So that's kind of like how it started.
Okay, no, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to this guy earlier that my parents know. My dad's been friends with this guy for like 25 years.
Okay.
And he told me, you got to make connections with people, right?
Amen.
Like I go to Villanova.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in my school, it's a big business school. A lot of connections, a lot of people talking to each other and stuff.
Yeah.
And I do neuroscience. So,
okay.
I'm not business, but I'm doing a minor in econ. And he said, in these econ classes, like, get to know some of your peers, It's really important to make connections with people because they could always have something to teach you. There's always something new to learn. And whether it's, like, the most simple thing or, like, whether maybe they could even help you in the future, it's like, it's a mutual relationship that a lot of people tend to ignore because they're so caught up in, like, being on their phone or something.
Exactly.
It's just something that I feel like it's really overlooked in today's day and age.
So how long have you been in school?
3.5 years, 4 years now, because we're second semester seniors.
Okay.
So we're
okay. So with it being 3.5 years, and with what you just said in terms of like trying to be open to like more interactions with people that you maybe not know as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's like the last interaction or conversation you've had on campus that you've kind of has like stuck out to you?
That's a great question. On campus is a little difficult because I've also been in this headspace where I'm like, I'm caught up in work. I'm doing my thing.
Figuring out
I got
what's
my
next.
Headphones in. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's next. It's been very busy in my life recently.
Yeah. And you can even go back to freshman, sophomore year, because I think about when I was in school, the cycle is freshman year, everyone is so open to just trying to make as many friends as possible.
Exactly.
And then obviously as time goes on, then we become a little more closed off, or like we have our group.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember even any talks that you've had like, earlier on in college of when you kind of had that mindset of like just wanting to like interact with anyone,
Yeah, so I actually have a very clear conversation.
Yeah,
one of my
please.
good friends today, his name is Ethan. I don't even think my girlfriend knows the story.
Oh, okay.
I was in organic chemistry 1. I was like standing outside, like on my phone, whatever.
Okay.
And this kid's like looking at me, like across the way, like in the standing by the other room. And like I look up and he's like looking at me. I'm like, what is this kid looking at? Whatever. And then I see him approach me. I'm like, okay, like what is this? I'm like my guard's up, right?
Yeah.
Because talking to people, it's like, everyone's guard's always up first. You don't. It's like never trust anybody, all this stuff. And he's like, hey, I think you're in one of my classes. Like, what's your name? I'm like, oh, like, I'm Anthony. Like, what's your name? Ethan. And I found out he was later a neuroscience major from my class. And we've already had like a few prior classes together, but I just never saw the kid. And we wound up sitting next to each other, talking and everything. And this past year we went to Vegas together. We were like roommates, and I don't know, we've just been really close ever since, and I never would have noticed it if he didn't come up to me first. And that was a little bit of an eye-opening experience too, because I was a junior taking Orgo, and I was already like, I don't need any more interactions, like whatever, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of over. I have my friend groups and whatever, and this kid came up to me and started talking, and I was like, he's a nice kid. Like and ever since I don't know. It kind of changed my perspective on things.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. So, I'm 30, and so obviously I'm guessing you're like 21, 22?
Yeah, 21.
Okay, so there's like so much going on in the news about how like y'all's generation is like the loneliest generation that like has ever existed. And I don't know if you heard about it. They're calling it like an epidemic.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating. And so
Okay.
I'm just curious, now that you're hearing that for the first time, how do you kind of feel like people like interact socially, like in school right now for you? Do you feel like everyone's just kind of closed off because, you know, like that's just the way it is and we all have our friends and we all have social media and, like into our phones? Or like, how do you feel like it is like making friends or connections nowadays?
It's definitely a lot harder making friends or connections because we're all so caught up in our phones. And I feel like it's also our culture. Like maybe it's like more of an American thing and like a European thing, but we're very separated from each other, you know, like there's no like intercultural connectedness between each other like you see in like Asia, like Southeast Asia. I feel like you get a lot of connections between other people, but here it's like very self-centered, self-focused, and I don't know, it's just so different. And going back to the conversation I had with this guy that's friends with my dad, he said that I should sit in a different place in class every single day so I could talk to new people. And I've been thinking about that idea for the past few days. Like, you know, I'm curious if it'll actually work. And, you know, and seeing like, you know, kids with earbuds in, it's like, am I really gonna be able to have a real interaction with these kids, or am I just gonna be sitting there like talking to myself? So I don't know. It is really different. And I mean, I guess I was alive when there wasn't cell phones really. Like iPhones, like, you know, we had Blackberries when I was a little kid and stuff like that. And the flip phone, whatever. But, you know, we don't really have a world without social media. Like, I don't know. I feel like even when we were young, social media was still like coming up, like Facebook, even whatever.
Yeah, like Vine.
Yeah, Vine, like all this other stuff, and I don't know. We're just so used to it. It's like making those interactions is so difficult for some people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I completely agree, because to your point of what you were saying whenever you met Ethan before, initially we can become so closed off to, you know, like secret little blessings that could exist our way, you know, but because, you know, sometimes we can be a little bit more reserved, we miss them. So, you know, with you being in your last semester of school, what would you say is a piece of advice that you'd like to give to like people just entering college or just like entering that new chapter in life? You know, because I think about, it feels like yesterday that like I was in college, and I just think about everything that I experienced and went through for the first time. And so, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah,
so my advice definitely would have changed from when I first started college to now, because I mean the world is such a different place from what I thought it was. And I'd say the main thing that I think about now, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's really how I think of it, because I also like DJ on campus. I don't do any like bars or clubs or anything crazy. Yeah, like
my girlfriend has got into DJing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great like hobby, and just it's fun, but it's also great for meeting people. So like people like see me around campus and they'll look at me and they'll be like, "Huh, I think like maybe I know that kid." You know, it's like, I don't know. It's I just lost my train of thought, actually. Funny enough.
No, you're good. You were talking about how your advice would have changed if you gave it when you first entered college versus giving it now, and then you were talking about DJing and then going from there.
Yeah. So it's not what you know, it's who you know. Because if you really find these connections around campus, like you're always going to find a mutual friend. You're always going to find someone that like, oh yeah, I know that person. Oh, you know that person? Like, you should meet my friend, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm friends with so-and-so. Oh, I'm friends with so-and-so. Like, and it's just kind of fun walking around, saying hi to a lot of different people and like having a lot of friends and just, I don't know. It's kind of comforting in a sense, because that means it shows that you're never really alone.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I'd say I still have a very solid group of friends, like a few friends, but I have a lot of acquaintances that like I'll see sometimes. I'll be like, yo, what's going on? Like, you have a good summer, you have a good break, whatever it might be. And you just make like a little small talk, but it's still that connection that a lot of people don't go for anymore.
Okay, so and I have a question, because I'm like kind of connecting some things that you've said, like, and putting it together. So you said, you know, like being in your second semester senior year, you know, you kind of are falling into a little bit more of like that closed off vibe, you know, because you're just ready to graduate, like finish school, like think about your next chapter. At the same time, you felt open enough to approach me at this table to like see what was going on
Yeah.
and like what it was about. So like, how do you kind of think about those two things, and like what made you act differently than the season that you said you might be in now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know, because I'm really just like thinking about my life, and this guy, his name is Dennis Sparks. That's this guy's name.
Your dad's friend?
My dad's
Okay.
friend, yeah. Mr. Sparks.
Okay.
And I just think he's already influenced me in such a way where I'm like, I really shouldn't have ever been closed off from making new interactions and meeting new people, because what's the worst that can happen? Like, they don't want to talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing, and like, you could always find something beneficial out of talking to someone new, like a new perspective on something, or whatever it might be, a friendship, even, like whatever it is. And I don't know. I just don't know why I ever decided to close myself off from that world. Maybe I got lazy. Maybe I just stopped caring. I don't know. But
I think what's interesting about that is, Dennis had that conversation with you, and then it's just kind of been sitting there in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
But then when a moment came up, then you're like, you thought of Dennis, and then you thought of like his advice, and then you actually took action on it. And I think that's like the difference between like a change happening or a change not happening. So you mentioned you're about to enter this like new chapter in life, and you've been thinking about a lot of things. Like, what's been top of mind for you?
What I'm gonna do, honestly.
Okay.
Because so I was initially a pre-med student, pre-med neuroscience, and then one day something clicked for me, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I decided to do that minor in economics and see if that was like somewhat useful for me or whatever. But I really just want to like start my own business one day. I watched this guy on Instagram, the School of Hard Knocks. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, he always goes up to like these business owners. He says like, when did you make your first $1 million? Like, what got you started in that whole thing?
Yes.
And I don't know. I find it very inspiring, especially with my my uncle and my grandfather. They've both had businesses before, and I don't want to be stuck in like that 9-to-5 scenario. I want to move past that and be able to do something that like I truly want to do.
And
I don't know.
Have you had? I don't want to put the pressure on you to say what you think that is yet, but have you had clues towards what direction that is going to be in? And because honestly, like, I feel like ever since I've graduated college, and I have a similar story to you in that I was in a master's program for accounting and dropped out
Really?
after I interned. Yeah, I was like, after the internship, I was like, dude. Okay, so the story's kind of funny story, but it was the end of busy season, and I don't know if you know much about the accounting world, but busy season is basically you're working like 60 to 80 hours a week for like a quarter. And we had just finished. We were wrapping up, kind of everything that we were doing, and we were about to get a send-off. All the interns about to go back to their schools and whatnot. And the senior manager walked into our meeting room, and she was like, hey guys, like, just to let you know, I know news has already been spreading, but I wanted you to hear it from me. I put in my 2 weeks, and I'm just moving to Australia, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and I'm just figuring it out. And in that moment, I was so shook, because I was like, I had the best internship, like probably out of like almost anyone in my school, in my grade. But at the same time, I was like, despite that,